Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Today I was inspired by my t-shirt and I thought I would make myself a peace frog pendant. I don't know if I've ever made anything with a frog motif in it before. If I have, it was a long time ago, so it'll be kind of fun to do that. I'm not going to do this exact peace frog, I'm going to do a different peace frog. I picked out a couple of pretty peridots that are little oval faceted stones, and they're 3 by 5 millimeters. So I think they'll be perfect for little eyes for him. This is a cartoonish sort of frog head with a peace sign below it. I hope it turns out cool. I think it'll be fun and whimsical, but you'll have to tell me in the comments whether you like it or not. Before we get started, though, I wanted to thank some people. I have a couple of new patrons. I have Ginger and Stuart W. Thank you for signing up. I really do appreciate your support, and I think you'll find that it's a great group of people over there that you can also tap into their knowledge base as well. So it's a nice community with a lot of cool people. So thank you all for being that way, and I really do appreciate your support. The other group is my YouTube subscribers, and we just passed 24,200 and some, which is amazing. Thank you for that. I'm flummoxed when I think about that number because I never ever thought that I would have that many followers on YouTube. So thank you for that. All right, well, thanks for that. Thanks also for the nice contributions. I really appreciate the buy me a coffees, the super thanks, people buying my merch off my merch store, and those people who have bought my ebooks. That really helps to keep my channel sustainable, and I really do appreciate it. So thanks for that. All right, well, let's get started on the peace frog. So this is one of my design idea sketchbooks that are available on my merch store. This particular one has a gauge to inches to millimeters chart on the back. Some of the other ones have some different charts or bits of information that are relevant to silversmithing. The feature I like the most about them, though, is the dot matrix in the background. I find that useful in helping me to keep my drawings a little bit better. Because every time I do a project, I sketch it out in advance, and that's just one of those things that I've developed as I started doing the YouTube channel. So get yourself one or two of those. They're great. Here's what I had in mind. Like I said, it's kind of a silly, fun, whimsical project, hopefully. So I'm going to cut out a piece of 18 gauge sheet. Actually, cut it off of my big sheet first. And then I scribed an oval using just a template, and I kind of arbitrarily chose that size. For this one, it ended up being about 25 or 26 or 27 millimeters at the longer point. So that'll be his face. I cut out some little ovals that were smaller, and those ended up being about... and I just used my shears. I didn't use any saw or anything. So that's about the same size. And those are about 9 millimeters, I guess. What we'll do is we'll cut this out. We'll solder those on. We're going to add some bezel, so we'll make a bezel or two. I may only make you watch me do one. We'll add a smiley face. This is going to be 18 gauge round wire with some little silver balls that we make out of scrap. And then we'll make a little peace sign to hang from him on a little loop. And we use 16 gauge for this, which is 1.3 millimeters, 18 gauge for the mouth and the rings, which is 1 millimeter, and that's round wire. Both the eyes and the face are 18 gauge sheet, although you could probably get by with thinner sheet if you were trying to save a little money. When you polish things, it gets thinner as you go, so I want it to be still relatively stout when I'm done. The bezel I'm using is 3/16 inch fine silver bezel strip in 26 gauge, which is 4.76 millimeters by 0.41 millimeters. I cut it down significantly. Here's a little piece that I cut down to about, 2 millimeters or 3 millimeters. The little peridots I have, or like I said, they're about 3 by 5s. So we'll make a little bezel for each of those and put them on the eyes. And then we'll just make that peace sign out of 16 gauge round. So for the bail on the back, I'm going to use I found some flattened 16 gauge square. And so I'll just take that and I'll make a double little bail, 2 little kind of incomplete rectangles soldered to the back for a chain to go through. Probably put one about kind of behind each of the eyes, like that. Let's start by cutting out this oval, and you can use your saw if you want to. I use these little Fisker's craft shears, and they can cut up to about 18 gauge. Although 18 gauge wears them out pretty fast. I get asked where to get these all the time, and you can find them online pretty widely. You can also get them at hardware stores or craft stores. This pair I got at a big box building supply store. Okay, so I'm just going to clean this up with my file. See if we can't make a good looking frog face. That looks pretty decent. Frog face. Should we put I think let's put the eyes on first. That'll make it easier to make sure to get the nose. I'm just going to drill a couple of holes for his nose and the mouth position better. So I think, so I'm going to just kind of make a mark about where these should be. I may adjust it based on how it looks to my eye, which is probably a mistake. So what I'm doing is I'm going to be soldering these on top, and so I wanted to have something to help elevate it from behind so that it doesn't try to tip when it solders. So I suddenly realized the last video I did was about pick soldering, so I took some pictures of my pick in my light box. So I left it in my light box. Okay, so let's get these positioned if we can. This one. So I'm going to sweat solder a little bit of hard silver sheet solder onto the back of that. And then it'll be where we want it to be, which is what the purpose of sweat soldering is. And then we can just lay them over there and hopefully they'll just solder down. So when you solder sheet to sheet, occasionally it kind of acts like a frictionless surface and kind of like floats around on there. So I'm going to kind of keep an eye on it. If it moves, I'll nudge it back into position. Hopefully I don't end up chasing it around on the surface. I use hard silver sheet solder primarily. I do occasionally use a little bit of paste solder anymore. And I use a liquid flux that I drip on with a dropper bottle, if I can locate that as well. Right here. And my torch is a Silversmith model. It's an acetylene air torch, and it pulls in atmospheric air through these holes, which mixes with the gas and produces a flame in the 4,000 Fahrenheit degree kind of range, which is much hotter than a propane or a butane torch, but not as hot as oxyacetylene, where they pump pure oxygen into the flame, because that raises it up into the 6,000s, if I remember. So let's get this fluxed. So I do what's called pick soldering sometimes. I pick up a little bit of solder on the end of the pick like this, and then you heat the piece up to soldering temperature. That allows you to just kind of place it where you want it to go, like that. It's a very handy technique. It's one of those ones that kind of raised my silversmithing level, I guess. The last video I did, the previous one to this one, was about that, but there's also one that's specifically about it. That was a good general instructional thing for it. I feel like if I tilt them out too much, they'll look like ears. And I want them to look like eyes. So I'm going to face it towards me so I can kind of get a better look at it. If I accidentally solder these pieces onto the back of the eyes, that's not really a big deal. I can always cut them off. So there's more mass in the bottom piece here than there are in the eyes. So I'm going to be focusing most of my temperature down here first. I saw them drop the eyes, so I think we got a good flow. Good enough, probably. Okay, so I think let's make the bezels for those little stones, and then we'll solder those on. So I'll probably make you watch one, and then I'll do the other one off camera just to save time. Okay, so let's file the end flat. Okay, let's reshape this now. I just got in my zone and I was starting to do it without doing it in front of the camera. I usually just pinch out the sharp corners to start with. If you want to use an oval jump ring mandrel or something like that, or a bezel mandrel, or whatever you want to call them, you can. I didn't have any of that stuff for many years. But a couple of times along the way, people offered to sell me their tools, and so I bought their whole set of tools that they had built up. And I ended up picking up a few things here and there like that. I sort of find it relaxing to do it this way now. It makes me really focus on what I'm doing. That's about right. What do you think? Will that look good for a frog eye? That looks like a frog eye to me. Okay, so I'm going to make the other one, then we'll solder them on. I just realized that much of the time I was doing that, after I made the bezels, I did not have my side camera on, which was unfortunate. And so I'm going to go back and I'm going to remake some of these components. Obviously I can't solder them on here, but I can show you how I made them. The eyes, when I soldered them on, I just set them on these little pieces like I did before, and soldered them down. There's a lot more mass in the bigger piece down here, so I focused most of the heat down there until the very end. The solder was on the inside of these, and so once it reached temperature, it just wicks along the inside edge of there. And I'll go ahead and make another smiley face like this, and another this, and then I already made the peace sign too. So it's one of those days, I guess. So I'm going to redo some of those things, and then we'll put them all together at the end. So sorry about that. Let's see. Let's start with the smile. We need to make a couple of little balls. The ends of his smile, and I actually flattened them, so we'll do that too. So let's cut a couple of little pieces of scrap wire. Let's see how those come out. And a runaway piece of silver for a second there. Okay, I'll let those cool for a second. In the meantime, I'm going to grab a piece of 18 gauge. We want to make a little smile, so you can either bend it around something curved, or you can just kind of do something like that. Get it about the right length. Cut it off right about there. Okay. I'm going to make sure your balls aren't too hot to touch there. One of them looks a little bit bigger than the other one because I probably cut them a little inconsistently. So when I hammer these, I'm going to hit this one a little less than this one. So this one may be a little fatter, but they'll profile-wise they'll look the same from the front. I should say. Doing flattening little things like balls is sometimes helpful to tape them to your bench block. That way they don't go too far when you do this. Normally I hit them and they go off to the side. So. Okay, let's see if we can position these at the ends of this wire. Okay, so let's solder those in. Did, in order to make a nicer connection between the sheet and this little smile, I filed one side of it a little bit flat. That's probably good enough. So one way to get some solder where you need it to be before you solder it down to something flat like that, let me see if I can find a little scrap. Some scrap 18 gauge. So we can sweat solder a little bit of solder on the back of this, which means to pre-attach a bit of solder. So we'll get that fluxed. And then we'll pick up just a little bit of solder. going to get it to flatten out a little bit. Then we should be able to just position this where we want it to go. We're doing this with the idea that we don't want to let it overflow. So let's say that's where we want it to be. To flux the piece too. But if you don't have a huge amount of solder on there, you should be able to get it to stick down there with a lot of, having a lot of it ooze out from underneath it. On the face that I was just making of the frog, there's quite a bit of mass in the eyes and the face itself compared to this little piece. And so I spent a lot of time heating the base but avoiding the wire here itself, because that'll reach temperature pretty quickly, but you need the bottom piece to also reach temperature too, so that it sticks down there. So you kind of can avoid the wire part itself until the very end. So that's how I did that. And then, with some 18 gauge round wire, let's add a little bit more of that scrap. I made 2 jump rings. So we just cut a regular jump ring off of here. Soldered that on top of our peace sign, which I'll make in a second. And this one I cut off to where it had a stem sticking out. So it's more like that. And then we flatten out the bottom here a little bit. So let's do that real quick. What I did was I squeezed it flat a little bit, like that. The little stem that's sticking out. I grabbed it like this and used my chasing hammer. And I use my chasing hammer to kind of like spread that out a little bit more even, like that. That out a little bit more even, like that. That way I have more of a flat platform to slide under the back of this like I did. So what I did was I set this on top of that like that, slid that under, and then just heated the whole thing and added a little bit more solder in there, although there was enough in the solder joint there where it probably would have attached anyway, so that's how we got there. So now let's make a little peace sign. I have a 16 gauge round wire. Probably the easiest way to do this would just be to make it round. Make it round on the ring mandrel up near the small side. And then we can slide it up until it's about the right size. Right now, it's almost there actually. If you hear a whine in the background, it's my spoiled dog. He's like, "Why are you filming over there? How boring. Why aren't you playing with me or something?" Or feeding me, probably. Alright, so let's solder that closed. I still have a little bit of solder over here. Crusty, crusty. And I'm going to have an extra peace sign. Probably have to make a third one to make a pair of earrings or something. Okay, where'd the rest of that 16 gauge go? Something I do sometimes in order to get a more exact measurement is if I line something up like this, make some black marker across it, then I can scratch a line through the black marker to get it as exact as I want, at least within the range of my ability to see anyway. So that right there, I think. So then I can just cut it off a little bit long and file it right to that line. So with a little luck, since I put it right where the previous solder joint was, as long as it's touching and it's fluxed well, it probably will solder that one for us. We don't have to add it. If it doesn't happen, then we'll just add a little bit more. And here, on the bottom there, if you have one of those miter vise jigs that has the 30-60s on it instead of just the 45s and 90s, I think it's about a 30-degree angle to come down from here like this. I'm just going to have to eyeball it. Mine's the 45-90 version. So I'm going to fake it. That looks about right. Maybe a little steep. That should be good. Okay, so I'm going to cut them just a little bit long. And the reason I'm going to do that is I'm going to solder them down. But it's hard when you get little round wires like this, they tend to roll around, especially when you're trying to get one angle lined up against something. So if you bend it a little bit like that, you can't roll around as easily. So that looks about right. So I put it on top of it like that, and then I'll just pick solder a couple there. Then we'll be able to cut them off exact and get them pretty good, I think. So. Now I can just cut these off and file them to where they're just about right, and we'll solder those in. Alright, so now we can just solder those other ones. Then remember I had this jump ring that I made. We're going to put this on so it's the opening is facing sideways. I'm not going to close it up for this one. The other one that I soldered onto the base of the frog is sealed. So I wanted one open so I could slide this on and then solder it on later. But we have 2 more steps on the frog's face. We need to drill his nostrils, and then we need to add a hidden veil on the back. So that won't take too long, hopefully. Again, pay attention to where all the mass is, which dictates where you're going to spend the most time heating. Okay, so then after we do this, we should be able to hook this on. See how it's going to look. That'll be cute. Okay. So now, let's go drill those holes. So a trick somebody told me a while back to prevent yourself from deforming the sheet you're drilling a hole through is to, instead of using a center punch, I used to use this awl, which has a sharper tip than a center punch. But if you use a little tiny ball burr, you can make a little dimple right where you want it. It'll serve the same purpose. I don't have a fancy rotary tool, so I'm just going to use my drill. That looks about right. Now let's add those bails on the back and close that, and then we can polish it up. So I'm going to pick solder a little bit onto the ends of these little staple shapes I made out of that stuff, so it's in place, and then we'll mount them on the back of this. I pushed the piece into a softer soldering surface. It's a Cool Tools kiln brick or block. Sometimes it's handy to have a soft surface like that. So let's do a little bit of soldering on the end of each of these. What you can do, if you're having trouble getting them to sit upright, is you can file the bottoms a little flat after you attach the solder. We'll see if we can't get them to do what they're told. That one doesn't want to. Try and get those as parallel as we can. Again, there's a disparity in mass. More mass in the piece underneath it than these little guys. And really, I could just use hard solder if you want to, because you just have to heat the bottom thing. But I seem to recall I got a little bit of solder on the loop coming off of the frog's face. So I'm going to use medium just to be safe. So I already had one mess up tonight. Don't need another one probably. There we go. Okay, frog with a peace sign. Let's pickle him. And we'll come back and clean him up and set the stones. Okay, I got this one set already, and I do this a little differently than some. I use the flat side of my chain nose pliers as a bezel pusher. And so when you're setting a faceted stone in a bezel like this, it's going to have a tendency to rock a little bit. So I'm going to kind of gently move that bezel inwards. I don't want to push too much on one side because it'll pop it up. But we do want to get it to where it sits flat and doesn't move too much. When you get to the point where it's not moving much, then you can start burnishing with this rounded outer part. Or with your burnishing tool if you're the sort who has a burnishing tool. So we're starting to look like what I drew up, I think. Let's run this through the back. Alright. So there you go. Got ourselves a little peace frog. Not the same as my short peace frog, but a peace frog. So tell me what you think. I'll get some better pictures and put them at the end. Okay, well that was the peace frog pendant. I hope you enjoyed that and got something out of it. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you go. That really helps to get my channel promoted. And I would love it if you'd take a moment and check out my main channel page. I started doing this almost 4 years ago now, and I've been doing 3 videos per week for most of that time. And so there's quite a big pile of content over there. I think last I looked there was about 540 some video tutorials. So there's lots of content over there, all different skill levels and lots of project ideas. So check those out, watch a few. I'd love it if you'd subscribe to my channel. It doesn't cost anything. You can even click the bell if you want notifications of when I release a video, although it's every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, pretty unfailingly. So before you go, I'd love it if you'd check out the video description down below as well. It has details about the video itself, as well as some important links. There's a link to my Patreon site if you want to find out more about that cool community. There's multiple tiers of membership there, the lowest being just getting rid of the YouTube ads, and then having some different privileges as they go up, like exclusive tutorials, also some live streams. So there's different perks for different levels. So check it out. I'd love to have you join us over there as well. There's also a link to my merch store if you want to get yourself one of those nice design idea sketchbooks. I find those super valuable. I filled up about 4 or 5 of them now, and it's a great way to have a record of what you've made and how you made it. And it's got that nice dot matrix in the background, which helps me to draw things a little bit better. So get yourself 1 or 2 of those. There's some other merch there too as well, so check out some of that stuff. Finally, there's a link to my ebook. My latest one is 2024's tutorial guide, and it's got a page for each of the video tutorials I did in 2024, which includes a picture of the sketch, a picture of the final outcome, a list of materials, difficulty rating, and some notes I made about the project itself, like did I learn something new from this, which I frequently do when I'm trying something different. did I like the project? Did I not? What would I do differently? Were there problems I ran into? You know, all those kinds of things. So you get lots of information, a ton of projects, and it's a really nice way to support my channel. So get yourself that one or the year before's, or both. There's a package deal if you get 2 of them. There will be one coming out after the first of the year for 2025 as well, and it should have just as much content and information as these ones do. So, and I'll probably have a package deal for all 3 at that point if you haven't gotten the first 2. So, all right. Well, thanks for watching today. Take care. Happy silversmithing.